Welcome to the Epic Success Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Shannon Irvine. Today, I'm going to be deep diving on the 4 things that consistently stop success and how to overcome them. We're going to talk about this from a practical standpoint, what I've seen over and experienced over my life as an entrepreneur that got started, that really wrestled with these 4 things and then moved and went so much into trying to solve them that's where the neuro coach model came from, and getting my background in neuropsychology came from trying to solve these 4 things for myself, hitting that entrepreneur glass ceiling and feeling like I couldn't get past it. So I want to talk from that vantage point, and then also from the scientific vantage point, and also from the spiritual vantage point. What's happening with these 4 things that tend to take us out of the game, slow us down, and make us stop, and what we can do to overcome them. So I'm super excited to be talking about this today. I really see these 4 things, and I'll get the 4 out of the way and I'll talk about each of them so you don't sit and wait for what are the 4. So really it's courage and confidence. Those are 2 of the 4. And these really rear their heads early on as an entrepreneur, business owner, somebody new in a world, or maybe even a new job, but where you don't have years and years and years of experience to lean on. And especially if you're a course creator, a coach, a service provider, someone doing your business online, it's a different feeling than working for someone else, right? You're having to put yourself out there, and you're having to grapple with what I believe is the biggest personal development you'll ever do, which is becoming an entrepreneur. 90% of what you need to do from a business perspective is super simple. I was coaching my group today, and I was saying, okay, raise your hand if you know how to go live. Raise your hand if you know how to step on a stage. Do you know how to take steps to step on a stage? Raise your hand if you know how to put down what you do, right? Raise your hand if you know how to DM somebody, if you know how to set up a call. You get my point. The how to do those things is actually fairly simple, fairly intuitive, and pretty much super figure outable. So even though what we tend to do when we feel lack of confidence or lack of courage is, we, as driven people, we will go seek out new strategies, new tactics, excuse me, I'm hitting my microphone all over the place. We will seek out the how to from different vantage points, different strategies, different tactics. But the whole time, that confidence, competence, and courage piece of the puzzle keeps presenting itself, slowing us down, not wanting to go live, not wanting to put ourselves out there, not wanting to DM people. And what's happening in your brain at this point in time is your brain is looking to the patterns of the past to inform the present and to create the future. And so your brain looking to the patterns of the past has nothing to look at because this is all new. So 2 things happen. Number 1, your brain goes into fight or flight mode. Like, what are you doing, sister? Like, we have no information on how to put yourself out publicly in front of people for people to judge you. So please come back down to what we know. And remember, your brain's always trying to keep you safe and familiar. You actually have to flip that switch on and train your brain to allow success. And so confidence, competence, when your brain starts to look to the past for this information, doesn't find it, you can imagine bells and whistles go off, and it really tries to give you every neurochemical to make you level back down to where you were. What are those neurochemicals? How do they present themselves? Well, procrastination, perfectionism, maybe some imposter syndrome, maybe and by the way, our procrastination looks very different as driven entrepreneurs. We don't just Netflix and chill. We actually go and see all the other to-do lists that we have to do, or we jump over to a strategy. We do things, but we don't do the thing that moves the needle, which is like going live, making offers, getting on calls, and serving people, right? And here's what I know. we all want to serve people. Like, you wouldn't be listening to my podcast if you were like, no, I really just want to take people's money and I really don't care about people. Like, I would drive you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? So we are called, we are driven, and we really want to help people. Yet still your brain serves you these neurochemicals. They're fight or flight neurochemicals that will put you in either a freeze state or a action state of perfectionism. So you go work on something more and more and more, but don't put it out, or that procrastination state, or put you in the anxiety of entrepreneur, like imposter syndrome, so that you don't put yourself out there. So what do you do? How do you overcome these two? Now, I know I said there are four. These are the two that really plague people who are just getting started. And there are two that plague those of us that have been going for a while, right? So I want to talk about them separately or differently. So the key here is, number one, to realize that your brain's trying to keep you safe and familiar, and that it's not your fault that you're not taking the action, because your brain is doing what it's wired to do. See the threat, take the threat out, right? So what the threat is your dream desired business, because most of us aren't taught, unless you've been in our programs or been in the 67-day year, learned how to train your brain to flip that switch on. Then unfortunately, you're just going on autopilot subconscious programming that really was fully developed when you were a kid or a young adult. See, that prefrontal cortex part of our brain doesn't fully develop until we're 24. And so that's the part of our brain that calls BS on money stories, calls BS on being afraid that people are going to judge us, that decides whether it's a truth or a lie. And so our subconscious only stores into the subconscious, which we call a belief, and only it runs 80% of your decisions, actions, and results, by the way. And so 80% is run by that subconscious. And we're using patterns of the past, patterns of our environment of origin about money. I don't know about you, but I heard money didn't grow on trees. I heard rich people were evil. I heard all of those things. So it's really hard to actually want to grow wealth when you believe that growing that said wealth that you want to grow will make you evil, right? These are the patterns that are running in the subconscious. Maybe even your worth. What do I have to offer? Have you ever told yourself that? That's actually a pattern that was spoken over you or that you experience. And it's firing from your subconscious without your knowledge or permission, but it is running 80% of your decisions, actions, and results. So the key to overcoming confidence and competence and courage issues, which are really firing off that fight or flight system, and your brain is bathing your brain in neurochemicals to get you to simmer the self down back to what you know is safe and familiar, meaning right where you are. So if right where you are isn't the vision, and you actually want to create a 6-figure business, a 7-figure business, become the CEO, have a huge upline and downline, then really flipping that success switch is key. And there's two pieces of that we deep dive into in our 67-day year program. You can look in the show notes for more information on that. It's really making your vision and your dream safe in your brain. It's building a pathway that your brain can identify 80% of the time, that sees the dream, the vision, the goal as safe and staying same as the threat. That's using the power of your brain. You know, the Bible says, renew your mind, which means every single day make it new, to think on what is good, true, pure, and lovely, given, called, desired, and driven by the Lord, has been put in your heart. And so these aren't just good sayings in the Bible. This is how the science works, right? God was telling us in scripture how the science works. And so we need to build that automatic success pathway toward where we want to go, not where we've been. Can I get an amen on that? So that's one piece of the puzzle. Second piece of the puzzle, if you're anything like me, your foot is on the gas going all the time in your business. But these success sucking stories about not being enough, about being judged, about who will listen to me, all those things, they're actually like putting your foot on the brake and the gas at the same time. It really does make you spin in circles. It makes you wonder, why isn't this working? That is that limiting belief or that story or that automation that you didn't even choose nor create, So part of what we really need to do to flip that success switch on is we've got to remove that pattern, not by wishing it would go away, affirming that it goes away, layering chocolate on top of it, but by actually removing it, actually plucking it. It's called synaptic pruning. We actually prune that out. And so when you prune that out and couple that with building that success pathway in your brain, that's what makes you become unleashed with the confidence, with the competence, with the courage to take the steps that you already know intuitively to do to grow and scale your business. So that leads me to the two that really do slow down entrepreneurs that have some success and are wanting to get to that multiple, maybe 6-figure onto 7-figure. And those two are identity and leadership. Identity and leadership. So we've gotten past the courage and the confidence piece. We're putting ourselves out there. We've trained our brain. We've done the action, and we're showing our brain that it's safe, and we're removing those limitations. Hopefully you're in 67-day year and you're removing those. So what happens? Well, we've gotten to a certain point without really questioning our identity. In fact, we're just in the identity of doing. And identity is built in the subconscious, right? And so a lot of times, my friend Myron calls it the lie identity. A lot of times in the beginning, we still believing the lie identity, which is that who will listen to me, all those things that I just got done saying. But unfortunately, something that trips up people that have created some momentum, but not where they want to be yet, is not a lie identity necessarily, although that still may be present, but it's an ego identity. It's putting yourself in this state of pretend, this identity of a pretend identity. It's not a lie identity, but it's not your true identity. And so therefore you're in a way pretending. But Shannon, don't we have to fake it to make it? No. Actually, where scale happens, it's when the identity that's in your subconscious, remember, thoughts and emotions, those combine with repetition, usually about 67 repetitions, and then every repetition after that, it strengthens it. So thoughts and emotions combine to become a belief. And when it happens, when that belief pattern happens, it drops into your subconscious and it runs automatically without your knowledge or permission, right? So 80% of the time that's firing. In the beginning, we overcome some of those limiting beliefs by removing them. When we've gotten a little further along, it's really our true God-given identity that scales us in business. It's saying, here's where I've been. Here's the mistakes I've made. Here's who I really am. And getting comfortable with an identity that is truly genuinely you from the moment you were conceived, the moment prior to conception, right? That God says, I know the plans I have for you, the plans to prosper you. That identity, the reason you were put on the planet, the calling, the quirks, what you believe about the strangest things, all of that really does matter. And if you've been avoiding that in the pursuit of perfectionism, that's when your identity starts to take a hit. You can get some momentum, but when you start to scale, there's the cracks start showing up, right? Because you go from this, one-on-one or having 10 or so clients to one to many, and then all of a sudden it starts breaking down because it's not who you really are. The pretending, the acting as if, those kind of things. I hope you're okay with me getting real today and talking about the things that really move the needle. What it does is it puts your brain in a bind, right? Your trueness, the authenticity of who you are, and when you're not in your authentic self, right? And so when that happens, there's this tug of war going on, and there's some doubt that's internal. And then when that doubt that's internal shows up in the marketplace, people pick up on that. So when you're starting out and you're conquering confidence and competence and courage, you're genuinely having genuine conversations so that it doesn't come up as much. But when you're going on this larger scale, if you haven't really flipped that success switch on, and you've taken on kind of a pretend identity or a perfection identity, and you're pretending, then cracks start to form in the armor of your growth, right? And so that leads me to the fourth thing that gets in the way, and that's leadership. And when I say leadership, it's a little different than maybe the rest of the world. When I'm saying leadership, it's leading your ship. It's your ship is you, it's your brain, it's how you operate, it's what you say, it's your authenticity, it's your excellence, it's your integrity, right? So, how do you lead her ship? Lead your ship well by being in full authenticity, because every time you're wanting to scale one to many and really grow, it means you need to double and triple down on building the identity in the subconscious that is truly authentically you. So no matter when you show up, people connect, people trust, people believe it's authentic, right? And leading your ship, don't be one way to the people you're trying to sell to and another way to your family and friends. It gets to be really important when you're building brain-based identity and brain-based leadership that you're in integrity across the board. How you show up authentically with excellence and really loving, falling in love with, owning, and expanding who you really are, and demonstrating and showing that with truth and authenticity allows for the jump, allows for the scale to seven figures. And why that is there's something about the group dynamic, psychologically speaking, that when we're in a lie identity or in a pretend identity, right? And we're sitting there pretending or being perfectionistic, and then we turn off the camera and then we're like, yeah, then that's great. And hi, if you're on video, you just saw me, right? So people have a radar for authenticity, right? And so the bigger scale you go, the more that plays a role, and the more overwhelmed you get as an entrepreneur, because it's hard to manage that. And so I'm being real talking about these things because every single friend of mine that has moved from the phase one, confidence, competence, courage, to identity and leadership has had to deal with stepping into their true, authentic identity and letting it be seen for all your quirky, amazing, great self. And knowing that that's what's going to come with that is people who love it and people who don't. And then having to deal with the emotions of that and leading yourself, no matter when you're online or offline or in the business or out of the business, as the same person. This is what creates the continuity when you show up in these bigger rooms or on stages, and so it's those kind of situations where people will be drawn to you and not kind of have the radar up and say something isn't connecting here. So these four things, the courage, the confidence and competence, the identity, the leadership, these are all key things that will stop and slow you down. And the good news is this is all super skill-based trainable to put your brain in a situation where it automates that true identity, automates your identity around who you are, your leadership, and ditches the overwhelm, the procrastination, the perfectionism, the imposter syndrome, all those neurochemical based things your brain is giving you so that you simmer down and come back to where you are versus where you want to be. And if listening to this podcast made you go, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I've been experiencing, I'm so glad that we talked about this today, because it's stuff that unfortunately once you get some success online, people feel like they can't share those things, because if they share those things, then it makes them look bad. No, if you experience those things, you are human in the entrepreneur space, and it is simpler than you think to flip that switch. And of course, in the show notes, I've got links to our replays from our Unleashed Entrepreneur video series. And I believe by now the doors will be open for the 67-day year. Listen, it is the peanut butter to the jelly of your strategy. All of the courses that you've bought, all the things that you're doing strategically to make the business work when your success switch is flipped on. And the good news is that carries with you to six figures, multiple six, seven figures, CEO, CFO, whatever it is for you, because you will have learned how to train your brain to allow the success and not work against it. So I hope this has been a valuable podcast. Do me a favor. If you aren't subscribed in YouTube, hit the button if you're listening to this in YouTube and subscribe. This is where you're getting the mindset to think like a seven-figure entrepreneur, to ditch what's getting in the way and to train your brain to allow success. Success comes so much faster when that switch is flipped on. It doesn't feel like heavy striving. It's not that you don't have to work. We work hard, but you'll know for sure that you're headed in the right way and you won't be in that internal tug of war anymore. That's really where the overwhelm comes from. So if you're watching me on YouTube, I would love if you subscribe, hit the bell and hit all, because you want to be notified when the podcast goes live. And if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, thank you so much for listening to the Epic Success Podcast. We just passed our 200th episode not too long ago. If you're not already subscribed to the podcast, I just would appreciate that. And a big favor for me, if you listen on the regular, would you do me a favor and go in and give a 5-star review and leave a note of what you like about the podcast so we can do more of it? I love you so much. And I will see you next week on the Epic Success Podcast. Bye for now.